Welcome back to ASC 110. You should know your section number by now. I will lecture, so I will spend about 20 minutes discussing my PowerPoints, and then we're gonna go together over just kind of like everybody will have the camera on, and we're gonna be able to have a conversation about what I just lectured. So in order for you, I wanted to show you that what I'm doing, you have access to it. So you just have to go on your portal and you should go to the course materials. The only difference that's showing on your side is that it's gonna show like week 1, week 2, but all of these materials should be there. So then you just have to go to week 3, which we're in. But this is the second class about the human origin, so I only have one PowerPoint. You can download it and we can go over together the PowerPoint. And I'm going to discuss the human origins. I know that this is a topic that might be a little bit uncomfortable for some of you. Maybe some of you was the first time when you're exposed to this theory. And as we discussed last class about what a theory means, if you remember the methodology, a theory is not just an opinion, it's not just a perception, it's data collection, it's facts, where most of the scientists agree with this theory. So it's a lot of data collected, a lot of analysis, and there are multiple scientists who actually contribute to this human evolution theory. So if you remember when we talk about the holistic approach and also about the interdisciplinary approach, where multiple scientists might come together to add to a topic like this. So I wanted to share a little bit, very, very briefly with you, the timeline of the history. This is actually taken from, let me see, no, I cannot do that. I want to see if I can do this. So this is taken from the book Sapiens, A Brief History of the World. So you're welcome to also check that book out. And it's kind of showing where we are in the world. We spent 30.5 billion years ago, we didn't spend, 13.5 billion years ago, the matter energy actually appeared. And only 4.5 billion years ago, the Earth emerged. So the smartest thing on Earth was, at that point, a very, very small molecule. 4.5 billion years ago, the smartest thing on Earth was a microbe. About 6 million years ago, the human evolution, some of you might think is, you probably saw that picture with the monkey and then the monkey evolved into human and then the human is at the computer now. That's not what the human evolution is saying. And then I will add on your Teams a video of 5 minutes to explain a little bit better, very, very briefly, the human evolution. But the human evolution states that we had a last common ancestor, like humans and chimpanzees had a grandmother as an ancestor together, and then we branch off in two branches. We went in two different directions. So there were no chimpanzees first, and then there were humans. We had a common ancestor. About 2 million years ago, the first Homo appeared in Africa, in South Africa. And this was the first human. It means those are the human. We are considered a Homo sapiens. Actually, we're Homo sapiens sapiens, what we are today. But our ancestors were the Homo sapiens. The Homo sapiens not appear until about 200,000, maybe even 500,000 years ago. So 2 million years ago, we had about 16 species of Homos on the Earth. Other species appeared, not appeared. A species disappeared, and we're not going to talk about all of them. We're going to talk about 5 of them in this class. So the 2 million years ago, we had one of the first Homos who were able to walk on 2 legs, being bipedalism. So 2 million years ago, they actually start spreading from Africa to Asia and Europe. I hope you all know what Eurasia means. It's actually Europe and Asia together, the two continents together. So most of the homos actually did started in Africa, but we do have other homos that started. For example, one of the last ones that disappeared, which was the Homo florensis, was in Indonesia on an island discovered. The last one was discovered 2010. And the only one that actually appeared in Europe was the Neanderthals, and we're gonna briefly talk about him, who actually started in Europe and was kind of spread in Europe and Middle East. So today's class will actually gonna try to cover, the next 14 minutes, we're gonna try to cover from this like 6 million years ago to like 13,000 years ago. We're gonna stop at the age of agriculture, the agricultural revolution, and we're gonna start with the age of agriculture for next class, chapter 3. I want to say, do you have any questions? But I realize I'm recording myself, so I guess. I don't know, it's not good. Okay. So how do we actually have this information? This is not people's opinions. This is not someone who woke up and had this idea. This is actually based on a lot of facts. And how do we actually have facts? From the time that we didn't have history written down, we have what's called prehistory in anthropology. So prehistory, it means whatever information and data we have from the Earth, what the Earth can actually offer us. So in our case, archaeologists spend a lot of time digging artifacts and bones. And the bones, that's why we actually probably, like, you're always gonna find teeth, because teeth are extremely strong. The bones are very, very strong. So compared with the skin is more easily to be decomposed. But the bones are staying with us for a long time. So we're able to look at the bones and see, what did these animals eat? How big were these animals? We can look at one bone and we can figure out how big or how small he was. And we have another cool video to show you this class. So we look at bones, we look at rocks, we look to see a rock, what are the layers and what is the history of that rock. Compared to like what type of leaves actually stayed on that rock, what kind of sand, was it in the water or was it not? That's how we know when we had a place where it was more water than was land. So this is a fossil evidence. That's what we base our timeline history on. So this is what a fossil is, the remaining of organism that are being preserved through a natural chemical process. And they can actually be petrified. They're very strong. Charles Darwin, I hope some of you heard about him. You probably did if you're taking sociology, anthropology, natural science. All of these classes probably will talk about him. So Charles Darwin came with the theory of evolution. Though he was not the first one to come with this theory, actually Aristotle, one of the aristocrats, the ancient Greek 2,500 years ago, he did talk about the organism being able to evolve and progress. 100 years before Charles Darwin, there was a Swedish naturalist who also talked about the progress and evolution. A generation before, there was another scientist, so he's definitely not the only one. He's associated with it, and everybody gives him credit for some reason. I'm not sure why. He did wrote his first book, the origins of species. This was his first book and the most known. Of course, he wrote a lot of articles before that, and where he explained that progressive change happened after he spent 5 years in a voyage. So he was obviously from a wealthy class in UK. He was British, and he was able to kind of go along with the explorers at that time, 1700s, 1800s. And he noticed that the plants and the birds, they have very similar characteristics. And he realized that some of the plants or some of the birds may look much simpler to more complex characteristics. So that's why he was the one who invented the term of natural selection, where he believed that certain species are going to be more likely to be favorable to the new environment or meeting the conditions of life, and then they will survive. And that's what's called the survival of the fetus. Yes. It took another 100 years through the Gregor Mendel to actually understand how actually this natural selection happens. And he was the one he was a monk. And I wanted to briefly say about the Charles Darwin that he was actually very religious and he was a Christian. It had a very hard time for him to publish this because it was kind of a social suicide. It was difficult for him to express this because that did question the idea of religion and the idea of God. But we're also going to talk about it. So the Gregor Mendel, he was a monk born in Austria, now what's Czech Republic, and he was doing a lot of experiments with peas. And he realized that the peas, when they mate, they're not really mating, they actually get half the genetics from their mom and half from their dad. So this was actually the discovery of genetics and how they work. And then we apply these genetics to humans and other species. You're also welcome to watch this very short 2 minutes bibliography. Very rarely, I think my longest video is like 15 minutes. I try to keep my videos very short, as well as my lectures. Mutation also happens sometimes when the natural selection happen, and when species, animals, plants mate. So mutation, we are not 100% sure what is happening. We're probably never going to become X-Men, and sometimes mutation can be positive or negative. A negative mutation could be considered like a Down syndrome. A positive mutation, I will explain the peppered moth. That would be one of the examples. So the pepper moth was actually initially white, is specific to Britain. And if you remember in the 1700s, what happened? Obviously, none of you can answer me, but the Industrial Revolution happened, and we're gonna probably go back to the Industrial Revolution over and over again. We have so many times that we're gonna mention this Industrial Revolution because it has such a huge impact on the world. So the pepper moth was white, and the reason why it was white because the trees were white, and it was much easier for them to be camouflage, so the other birds will not eat them, or other insects will not eat them. It was just a way to survive. Because of the Industrial Revolution, the pollution, the trees became much darker in color. Then the pepper moth became actually darker in color. This is one of the species insects that we could actually watch because they live 7 days, so we can, easily watch the generation, how many generations we were able to see in the past 150 years, quite a lot, right? With humans, it's a little bit more difficult to actually see the differences and how we actually evolved from the 6 million years ago when we had our last common ancestor with the chimpanzees until today. But we can definitely understand why natural selection and why some of us have different skin tones than others. I want to remind you, and we're going to talk about it, that race is a purely social construction, and our skin color does not make any difference in biologically of who we are. The skin color, it just shows that we need more melanin or less melanin, that we need that for the sun radiations. So when the homos were actually evolved in Africa, most of us were much darker skinned. The reason for that was because of the weather. We needed more sun, so we needed the skin to protect us. It was natural selection. Our body reacted to what we needed, so we adapted. When the homos start traveling out of Africa, theory, and they went to Europe, and not just Europe, when they actually evolved in other parts of the world, like we mentioned Homo florensis, Neanderthals had whiter skin. The reason for that was just because, like in Europe, we have 6 to 9 months. We don't have as much sun, so that means we don't need as much sun. We don't need as much melanin as someone from a tropical area it needs. So that's the only reason of skin color, no other. 99.99%, we are the same. It's only 0.001% the difference between us. And definitely the skin color is not one of them. So how exactly